This is a continuation from the previous video. One thing I noticed I didn't realize before, my ankles weren't attached. So after I've created my biped, you want to look at it to make sure it's what you want, because you can now, after you've created it, put the biped in here, you can now make adjustments. So I made adjustments to my ankle attach. See, the ankles weren't right. They were like this at 0. So they need to be, let me double check this in side view. Maybe 0.23 to be correct. Okay. So just check your biped, because now, and you usually don't use 5 toes. Most people just use 1. I'm going to use none for this. Oh, you can't, you have to have 1. And it's because often when we do feet, we just do 1 toe. Because they wear shoes, or they're a character that doesn't have a whole lot of movement there with individual toes. Okay, and so you can make those changes now while you have the biped in here. I don't really need that many spine links. He's not going to bend that much. It's going to bend at the waist, bend maybe in the middle and at the shoulder. So spine links 2 could be enough. Let's do 3 just to give him a little more flexibility. Okay, and so that's where I make changes to my character's parts. If I want to make changes, for instance, I want the head to be larger, right? I'm going to go to my motion tab, parameters, figure mode, and then I can make the head smaller, larger. And any other parts that I want to make adjustments to, I can do that here. Now, for your skeleton to match your characters, and this is where we get into more about why we use the Vitruvian Man pose. You just go to his upper arm and rotate those out, and now you see he's in that same pose, and he would fit inside my character if I had a character of a human. Most of the time we're not doing literal humans. This will suffice for humans and humanoid figures. The great thing about starting with the biped is it's fully articulated. However, often you are going to do characters where this won't work. One of the things that needs to happen for, once we get into skinning, for the skinned character to animate properly without problems, is that you want your bones to fit inside your character as well as our bones fit inside our bodies. If you again, use yourself as an example. If you look at your hands and you feel your fingers, you feel your hands, feel your arms, right, your toes, your body, for the most part, I mean, your torso is a little different because you got that rib cage, and then there's just the spine, and then the pelvis, and you got a bunch of organs in there. But for the most part, our body, our skin, our outer form fits to our bones. And that has to be the same way with your characters in order for them to move without issues. As much as possible, you want the bones to fill the character. Because in this case, we don't have internal organs and we don't have muscles. The bones are going to act to replace those. And the closer that the bones are to the skin, the fewer problems you will have with your characters as they animate. And you'll start to see this as you begin to animate. You'll get some weird points. You'll get some weird things going on. The reason that we make the arms and the legs apart like this is if the arms are down on the character that you've modeled, when you go to move the arms, say you move the arms up, you get this weird webbing in the underarm. and it does some really strange things. You'll have points that don't move, and we're gonna problem shoot on how to fix those problems. But you get fewer of them and have to deal with them, which you end up spending time on if you set up your bones to match your characters. You set up your rig to match your characters as closely as possible in the first place. And just the way you do that is by bringing in your character and using it as a background for the bones. And we're going to talk about bones too. So those are also under systems, bones. And here they are much more independent. I'm just going to do the default bones, draw default bones. All right, so I'm just going to take the default bone and draw a bone in this view. And they keep going until you right click. And you see now I've just now created a chain of bones. And they are automatically linked. So if I move my hand, it swings the upper arm with it. If I move this arm, it takes the whole arm with it. It's just like we did with our bones. I can move the elbow this way. I can rotate this way. All right, so this is a linked bone chain, and I can move my hand. And so you could see if I had a skin that fit over this, and I start to move these parts and pieces, and I apply the skin modifier, it will take the character with it. So when you see in animations, when you see characters move, what's actually being moved and manipulated is the rig. And that is why this is called rigging. Now, it starts to get more complicated to create your entire bone structure, but if I needed bigger bones, and under the bone you can control the width, the height, and the taper, and the taper is how it tapers from the one end to the other. I can also control fins, and fins help fill out the bone. It fills in, it's sort of like acts like the muscles on the bone. And so I'm just going to show you by, let's see, let me find this arm in the, there we go. I'm just going to show you by creating another one next to it that I've changed, okay? So 4 by 4 is the size, so this is 4 this way and 4 this way. I'm going to change my taper to, let's go somewhere around 60. Okay, and then I'm going to add fins. And now I'm going to create another bone. And you see there's more substance to this bone than there is to the original bone that I created. And this helps with some of the things that I was talking about earlier about making sure that if you create your own rig out of bones, you create your own skeleton for your characters and you don't use the biped, it helps fill in the area to help create fewer problems. So it's really important to know this up front as you're starting to work on rigging your characters that we created in 2405, and start thinking about how you're going to do that. To keep in mind that you have those, you have the ability to to control your bones in that level of detail. And to me, this looks much more like, say this was my arm, this is much more like the bone in my arm is about that long, the upper arm is about that long, and it tapers about that much, and it's round-ish, and so the fins help fill that in. And you can modify those. Through the edit tab. So say I decide I want smaller fins, I can reduce the size of my fins. I may have made them too big. Let's just type in 1. and that way maybe my arm is not quite so beefy there. So I've just reduced the fins on that. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot more about bones. I want to go back to talking about bipeds in the next video. We're going to talk about how to make them walk, and we're going to work with the bipeds first, and then we'll get more into bones after that. So let me know if you have any questions.